There's a dead simple principle of construction that cuts heating and cooling bills by up to 80%. Not reduces them, not trims them, slashes them permanently, using no panels, no turbines, no monthly subscription to a utility company. The method has been in continuous use since before the Roman Empire. The United States government studied it intensively for an entire decade, confirmed it worked, then quietly shut the research program down the moment energy prices dropped and the oil companies stopped feeling threatened. The principle is this: dig down 4 feet, and the earth stops caring what the weather is doing above it. That is not a metaphor. That is physics. And it is the physics that an entire industry, worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually, needs you to never fully understand. Here is your heating bill. The average American household spends over $1,300 every single year just on heating and cooling the space they live in. Not water heating, not appliances, just the temperature of the air inside 4 walls. Over a 30-year mortgage, that is close to $40,000 handed directly to a gas company, an electric company, or both for the privilege of not freezing or sweating inside your own home. And every one of those dollars depends on a single assumption, that the only way to control the temperature inside a building is to fight the temperature outside it. That assumption is wrong. It has always been wrong. And the proof has been sitting 6 feet below your backyard the entire time. Go dig a hole right now anywhere in the temperate United States. Go down past the frost line, past the point where surface conditions start to lose their grip. By the time you hit 6 to 8 feet of depth, you will find soil sitting at somewhere between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Not in July, not in January. Always. Regardless of whether it is 105 degrees on the surface or 12 degrees below zero, the ground at that depth holds a temperature that barely moves more than a few degrees across an entire calendar year. The United States Department of Energy has confirmed this. The EPA has confirmed this. Geothermal engineers have built entire industries around this fact. Yet when you go to buy a house, nobody mentions it. Nobody builds to it. Nobody teaches it. Because if they did, the math of the heating and cooling industry falls apart completely. The structure that takes advantage of this is called an earth-sheltered home. And before you picture something dark and damp and barely habitable, understand what it actually is. Earth sheltering means building a structure with soil pressed against its exterior walls and, in full designs, covering the roof with a layer of earth. The south-facing side remains open to glass, large windows that catch winter sun and flood the interior with light. Every other surface sits wrapped in the most effective thermal buffer on the planet, the ground itself. Now here's how the physics works, because it is remarkably straightforward once someone actually explains it to you. Your conventional above-ground home sits exposed to whatever the air is doing. On a January night at 10 degrees, the outside of your wall is being hit by that cold. Your furnace burns fuel to push back against it constantly. On a July afternoon at 98 degrees, your air conditioner runs nonstop, fighting the heat, pressing through every surface. You are in a perpetual, expensive battle against the atmosphere. An earth-sheltered wall does not have that problem. The soil surrounding it acts as what engineers call thermal mass, a physical material with such high heat capacity and such slow thermal conductivity that it absorbs temperature changes over months, not hours. Think of how long it takes a thick stone wall to heat up or cool down. Now multiply that by thousands of tons of compacted earth. The temperature difference between your interior and the material directly touching your exterior walls is almost nothing. There's almost no heat trying to escape. There's almost no cold trying to invade. Your heating system barely has to work. A study comparing a standard 135 square meter home with an identically sized earth-sheltered structure, using real climate data from Denver, Colorado, found that the underground design required 72% less energy to maintain comfortable interior temperatures. Not a rounding error, not a modest improvement, 72%. Research published through the Intech Open academic platform confirmed energy savings of 60 to 70% in mid-temperate climate zones. The EBSCO research database, pulling from peer-reviewed construction literature, documents savings of up to 80% in heating and cooling costs. These are not promotional claims from someone selling you something. These are numbers from Building Science. There's a town in the Australian outback called Coober Pedy. It sits in the South Australian desert where surface temperatures routinely crack 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Decades ago, miners working the opal fields started carving their homes directly into the hillsides, digging into the rock and living underground, not because they were eccentric, because it worked. Today, over 80% of Coober Pedy's population lives in underground dwellings. The interiors hold at a comfortable 73 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. No air conditioning, no industrial cooling system, just Earth doing what Earth has always done, maintaining a temperature that human beings can live in while the surface above bakes in heat that would kill you in hours. This is not a modern discovery. Cave dwellings in China's Henan province date back to before 2000 BC. The rock-carved atrium homes of Matmata in Tunisia have sheltered people from the extremes of North African desert heat for centuries. The Romans knew this, medieval builders in Europe knew this, root cellars, which every farm family in 19th century America dug as a matter of basic survival, operated on exactly this principle. They were not refrigerators, they were just holes in the ground. And they kept food at a stable temperature for months without consuming a single watt of electricity or a single cubic foot of gas. The man who brought this into modern architectural practice is Malcolm Wells, an architect from New Jersey who spent the first decade of his career doing exactly what his clients expected, building conventional above-ground structures, winning awards, spreading, in his own words, corporate asphalt across the American landscape. Then, in 1964, something shifted. He walked into a small underground theater at the New York World's Fair and felt it immediately. The cool, the quiet, the sense of a space that did not need to fight anything to stay comfortable. He rebuilt his own office underground in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. He documented what happened to his heating bills. He started writing about it. He published, he lectured, he taught at Harvard. By the 1970s, he had become what architectural historians now call the father of modern earth-sheltered construction. In 1978, the University of Minnesota opened a dedicated research center, the Underground Space Center, to study earth-sheltered homes scientifically and systematically. The center produced a design guide that sold over 250,000 copies, and it was translated into Chinese, French, Spanish, and Russian. It was not fringe material. It was peer-reviewed, institutionally funded, government-supported research. The Minnesota Housing Finance Agency ran a full demonstration program, building earth-sheltered homes across the state and measuring real energy performance in real conditions. State legislatures were interested. Architects were interested. Homeowners who remembered the 1973 oil embargo, the one that left them in line for gas and shivering in living rooms they could no longer afford to heat, were intensely interested. Then oil prices dropped. In 1988, the University of Minnesota Underground Space Center was closed. The state funding for earth-sheltered housing research evaporated. The archives were packed up and shipped to Louisiana Tech University, where they sat out of the mainstream conversation for decades. Malcolm Wells watched it happen. He wrote about it. He noted bitterly that the United States could claim only a few thousand earth-sheltered homes by the end of the 1980s, a country of hundreds of millions of people, with a technology proven to slash energy costs by 70%, and barely anyone building it. His explanation was simple and accurate. When fossil fuels got cheap again, the incentive to remember disappeared. Follow who benefits from your forgetting. The HVAC industry, the companies that manufacture, sell, install, and service the heating and cooling systems inside conventional above-ground homes, generates enormous revenue from your monthly utility bills. A new heating and cooling system costs between $5,000 and $18,000 to install. It lasts a decade, maybe two, and then you buy another one. The insulation industry profits every time you try to reduce the heat loss from exposed above-ground walls. The natural gas distribution network requires continuous customers paying for fuel to burn. None of these industries have a product to sell you if your home is surrounded by earth that holds a stable 55-degree temperature year-round and requires almost nothing to bridge the gap between that and comfortable. You cannot put a meter on geology. You cannot bill someone monthly for a hillside. An earth-sheltered home does cost more to build, typically 10 to 20% above conventional construction. Excavation, waterproofing, and structural engineering for below-grade walls add to the upfront number. Those are real costs. But a Minnesota-based company that has built hundreds of these structures reports energy savings of 80% compared to a conventional home of similar size. One homeowner they built pays about $115 per month in total utilities during peak usage months. The Minnesota state average is over $150 per month for electricity alone before adding gas. The math of payback is not complicated. Within 10 to 15 years, the savings exceed the premium construction cost. After that, every year of reduced bills is money that stays in your account instead of flowing to a utility company. Here is what the construction actually involves, simplified down to its functional principles. You choose a south-facing slope or hillside site where water naturally drains away from the structure. This is critical, because waterproofing is the discipline that makes or breaks an earth-sheltered design. You excavate. You build your walls from poured concrete, strong but durable and an excellent base for waterproofing systems. You apply a waterproof membrane to every below-grade surface. Modern rubberized asphalt membranes, high-density polyethylene sheets, or synthetic rubber options all provide decades of reliable protection. On top of the waterproofing, you install rigid foam board insulation against the exterior of the walls. This keeps the interior from drawing heat out into the surrounding earth while still letting the mass of that earth buffer temperature swings. You backfill. You plant the roof. The south wall faces full sun, fitted with large windows that pull in passive solar heat during winter and are shaded by the roof overhang in summer when the sun sits higher in the sky. The interior does not feel like a cave. It does not feel dark. It does not feel damp or claustrophobic. Wells designed his own underground gallery in Brewster, Massachusetts, with skylights, light wells, and floor-to-ceiling south-facing windows. He heated the entire 200 square foot structure through Massachusetts winters by burning 2 cords of wood per year in a single small stove. 2 cords of wood. Heating a building in Massachusetts for an entire winter on what amounts to a weekend's worth of firewood, because the earth surrounding it meant almost no heat was trying to escape. The people in Coober Pedy are not doing anything exotic. The family digging into a Chinese hillside 4,000 years ago was not doing anything radical. The American farmer who built a root cellar was not pioneering a lifestyle. They were all doing the same thing, using the thermal stability of the ground as a resource, the way any sensible person uses what is free and available, rather than purchasing what is expensive and engineered. The only thing that changed is that someone figured out how to sell you the expensive engineered version and make you forget the free one existed. When energy prices spike, and they will, they always do, there will be another wave of interest in this. There will be articles and maybe another government program or two. Then prices will ease and the conversation will disappear again, right on schedule. The same cycle that buried the University of Minnesota's work in 1988. The same cycle that turned Malcolm Wells from a nationally recognized architect into a footnote most people have never heard of. But the ground temperature does not change with the news cycle. It does not respond to oil futures, or gas company lobbying, or what is trending in home improvement television. 55 degrees at 6 feet down this winter. 55 degrees at 6 feet down next summer. The same temperature it held when the Metmata cliff carvers were building their homes. The same temperature it will hold long after every heating and cooling system you have ever owned has been scrapped. They closed the research center. They dried up the funding. They let the conversation die when cheap gas made it convenient to forget. But the physics stayed. It was always going to stay. It does not need anyone's permission to keep working. If you found something here that the industry did not want you to find, share it. Every person who learns this before the next energy crisis is one fewer person caught off guard when the bills come. Subscribe and stay close. This is where information that inconveniences the wrong people tends to surface first.